eyeballs as possible, right? And driving marketing around just attention on the product as a whole. And like I said, product and brand marketing is a very different aspect of this. You're talking about just eyeballs versus engagement. Or if you're looking at direct revenue, you're going to take a completely different approach. The LCS famously talks about how much money they lose, right? It's a huge product, it's awesome, it's a huge marketing tool for them in regards to players and skins and all this other stuff, but they lose money. Vice versa, there's small Smash Brothers organizers in the space that are making profits on big events, right? So your take needs to be different, and how you approach it needs to be different too, depending on what your goals are. So once you have a good sense of where you want to go and what your goals are, the first thing you can do, the second thing you can do, honestly, is to understand the ecosystem and start to build relationships. And there's a lot of players in the space. You know, a lot of people think of esports as like teams, players, and the league, and that's kind of like the whole thing. But there's so many more moving pieces. You have the streaming platforms, Twitch, right? You have viewers and fans that are going to engage and watch this. You have the publisher and developer who ultimately hold the key to allow you to run tournaments. I can't tell you the number of times that we've heard about big investors coming into esports with millions of dollars wanting to run a tournament, you know, like Eastern Europe or something, and they're inviting everyone from all over the world, and the developer is like, I'm not sure this is going to be good for our players, and they shut it down. So without a relationship with publishers and developers, ultimately, you're not going to get very far, and that's a really important piece. You have tournament organizers like ESL, like MLG, that are important to engage with, to understand how they work in the space. You don't want to spin something up and be in conflict with one of their events and all of their draw and marketing, and your event dies, right, because no one's watching, they're all watching the ESL event. And from there, there's also grassroots tournament organizers. These are the guys that run tournaments on the weekend. They're not doing this full time. They do this in their spare time, maybe on their college, right? But they play an important role in engagement and creating a competitive culture around your game or your brand, which is really, really important. Production companies like ESL, like MLG, super important as well, right? You're going to need someone to run production. Maybe you're a company that can do it yourself, but ultimately this is foundational to an esports product. You have teams as well, hosting all the players, helping them be sustainable, coaching them, guiding them. You have the players themselves. You have content creators, and this is an interesting point too, right? You have people on YouTube, you have people on Facebook, you have people creating content around your game for people to engage when they're not watching directly or they're not playing. That's an important aspect too. You have broadcasters on Twitch, influencers that play a vital role, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. You have press. Press is brutally important as well as they cover your game. There's more outlets popping up all the time, Yahoo Sports, ESPN, they want to cover your game. And you want them to cover it in a positive way. So engaging with them, understanding what their goals are is going to be important too. And then lastly, sponsors are super important. Maybe you're looking to offset some of your costs. Maybe you are a sponsor. These are an important role to play in the overall ecosystem. So you've come in, you understand your goals, you understand the players in the ecosystem and how you can interact and work with them, and you're looking to build. And again, this is the sentiment of Twitch, the experience that we have, what we've learned as well, and just a crash course in what you should do and best practices for you. So the first thing is you're going to build it with this really cool picture. I don't know why. But ultimately, you're trying to design a compelling and competitive format, right? And a big thing is open and accessible tournaments. It's something that we do for Rocket League. Try to get as many people engaging in esports in the game as possible, and it's really, really important. And they're going to drive communication. They're going to talk about it on social media. They're going to talk about it with their friends. Open and accessible is really, really important. And then continuous engagement. And what I mean by this is, what we see a lot right now is you have this big, long circuit that extends over 6 months, and you have all these different touch points and all these different tournaments, and each one qualifies someone to the final stage, right? And what we see is, we'll take League of Legends, for example, is you have potentially have the circuit, and the most popular team and the most talented team, TSM, plays in the first stop, they win, and they auto-qualify for the end. And you don't see TSM in your ecosystem for 5 months, right? They're out of the picture. They're not engaging. They're not using their marketing assets to pull people in and engage with your product. So while auto qualification is a very digestible and easy way to understand the system, it ultimately pulls the best and potentially the most influential influencers out of the ecosystem, sitting by the wayside, waiting for this tournament to conclude. Continuous engagement is really important. This also actually is reflected in needing multiple touch points throughout the tournament. What I mean by that is, say you have a 6-month circuit, you have one entry point for people to qualify in, and then if they don't qualify, they're just sitting and not playing at all. Have multiple qualification points. If it's the top team, something happens, their internet breaks, someone gets sick, and they're out, you're excluding one of the most helpful influencers on the whole to engage with your tournament, and that's a really important piece too. And I liken this to tennis. Tennis has a really interesting format. They have tons of stops. Every top player plays at every stop. And coming into the event, you know who the favored players are. They have the ranking points to understand the best players. Who are the underdogs? It's very compelling, and it is continuous engagement throughout the entire system. You also want to utilize quality production. And this is a really challenging piece because quality production can oftentimes be expensive. But the thing is, first impressions are super important. If I'm a player and I'm engaging with your brand, you're developing an esports product, and I tune in and I see something that is really amateur, really unexciting, it's very unlikely that I'm going to tune back in, or at least it's going to be a very big uphill battle for me to tune in again on whatever it is that you've created, and that's important. Secondly, there's this fan sentiment based on perception, which is, if I love Rocket League, or I love some game, and I tune in and the production's really bad, I get a sense that the developer or the brand doesn't care about this esport. Doesn't care about whatever it is that you're putting together, and rather than investing in production, you'd rather hold on to that money. Or even take the time to choose the appropriate partner when you ventured into the space, and that's important too. An example that I like to use is actually Turner with E-League. Turner with E-League has invested, potentially over-invested, depending on who you ask, in their production. But the first time you tune into E-League, you get a sense of awe at what they've created and how much they care about esports and their product. Right? They've come in a way, they've made a huge splash. They had a big Overwatch tournament last night, CSGO. And as such, they have really made a big splash in the community, and people are receptive to who they are and what they're about. And recently they announced that they won a CSGO major. I don't know if you guys have caught up, I'll talk a little bit about that later. They won a CSGO major as a result, and that is a testament to their investment and what they've looked to do. Also, you want to incorporate influencers and talent. That's really important. We're here at TwitchCon, tons of influencers, tons of broadcasters around. And how we've found this helpful and how this can contribute to the success of the product overall is broadcaster and influencer run qualification tournaments. We see guys running Clash Royale tournaments, qualifying into bigger circuits, hosting the tournaments themselves. They cast over the top of it. You use the influencer marketing reach, all of their following, to draw people into the tournament, and it just sort of cumulatively adds to the overall picture of what you're putting together. And a really big thing, we're seeing this today, is broadcaster influencer participation. Last year at TwitchCon, we did a big H1Z1 competition. We had all the top influencers from Twitch playing in that, and hit somewhere around like 140,000 viewers at its peak. They use all of their marketing to draw people in, and that's really important. So as you venture in, think about this. And lastly, something that's very unique about esports, different than traditional sports, is that the casters, the talent casting and the marketing is much, much bigger, in the sense that casters have a huge following. And I liken it to this picture. Former pro players, famous League of Legends casters, all with their own following, so that when people tune in to watch, they also tune in to watch their favorite casters. And it actually has a lot of bearing on the success of the product and of the broadcast as a whole. Also talking about garnering support. And so to card this up, there's a few instances where I've seen big money coming in, wanting to run a tournament, investing a ton, And what they don't know is that developers actually generally have an appetite to support esports initiatives and esports tournaments. They want to give you in-game items, they want to give you money, they want to give you marketing support, things to support your effort come from the developer, and it's really huge. So before you go out and you do something big, talk to the developer. They're an important point in the overall ecosystem. Twitch, we're here as a resource. We're here at TwitchCon. I'm going to be out in the hall after to talk to you guys, but Twitch has a bunch of teams, especially the Twitch esports team, to help you succeed, to give our expertise, because ultimately Twitch just wants this whole thing to grow. It's really the mantra of the esports team at Twitch. If it gets bigger, it's good for everybody, and that's what we're looking to do. And there's a lot of entities like Twitch that just want to help, right? Just want to make things better. And then lastly, community support is an important aspect too. What we've seen is a ton of success where people go onto like Reddit or social media like Twitter and ask the community, what do you want? Like, what kind of tournament do you want? What do you want to see? How do you want to engage with this product? Where have people failed? And from there you have a ton of learning, but it also builds a sense of ownership and shared vision with the community over the product and the esport initiative that you're creating. And they can be a huge help. They can tell you if you're doing things right or wrong. And that's really good. And I don't know why I picked this picture out of stuff. That's a theme throughout this presentation. I think an important piece, one of the most important too, is that we don't see in esports a lot is auxiliary content. Content supporting these different esports products and esports initiatives. And auxiliary content is important for a lot of reasons. One, it helps you market, right? It builds attention going into these big events. It helps to build the narrative. Why should you care about this esports product? Why should you care about this tournament? It's really, really important. And this can tell that story. And lastly, like, auxiliary content allows you to engage with content creators. There's a ton of people on YouTube. There's a ton of people throughout the world that want to write articles and write commentary about whatever it is that you're creating. And with them comes their following and their marketing outreach too. And that's a really important point. And actually, generally, the example we generally use inside Twitch is Ultimate Fighter. If you guys have ever watched this, it's based around the UFC. And what it is it tells the story of up-and-coming fighters, not the best fighters in the world, but up-and-coming fighters. And it gives you a reason to watch and root for them, and that's really, really important too. It gives you a reason to care. Ultimate Fighter is great at this. It actually attracts a ton of people that don't generally engage with the UFC to tune in and watch, and then thus engage with the fights that they're going to be at the end. Right? So you create all these new fans, this new engagement. And Ultimate Fighter is a really good example of that. And some examples for you guys that we've seen a lot of success with, there's like highlight videos. Highlight videos, we see a lot of people that don't necessarily follow the esport to watch and engage with because it's just general gameplay that's interesting to them. Talk shows like the Capcom Pro Talk, it's Mike Ross. I've been all freaked out. But he talks about what's up and coming. What are the big tournaments? What's going on? What are the interesting storylines? And that's an important aspect too. Developer discussion, SCMC is really great at this. Ruby will make a quarter talking about Vainglory. They do this every Thursday. They talk about the state of the game, state of balance, how they're thinking about the game, how they're thinking about features. And it builds transparency, it builds trust, and it builds engagement with their game and with their esports. And then player pieces is a really important point too, right? Related to Ultimate Fighter, it gives you someone to root for, it gives you someone to care about. This is Kronobi, the big Rocket League player. I encourage you guys to check this out. But going into the event, the RLCS finals, after this was made, people care more and more deeply engaged with the finals and with the player. That's an important piece too. And one overlooked point that we see a lot that is worth calling out is you need to centralize important information. And this is an example of the Vainglory Evil 8 website that we helped create alongside SAMC. There's nothing turns people off more than being interested in something and then not being able to find a centralized source of information, right? You see some marketing, you watch a video, you want to learn about Vainglory Evil 8, Rocket League, or whatever, you want to go find out more information. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere where this information lives, which is an important point. People need to know how to compete. How do I enter? How do I be involved? What's my path to being the best player in the world, just like these guys? Where do I watch? We have a link up, to log in on Twitch. We're linked to Twitch ID. Log in, watch on Twitch, engage on the platform. What's at stake? Why should I even care at this tournament? How much prize money? Is it $5? Is it $5 million? Is it a big trophy? What is it? Results are really important. You can check in, follow, and understand what's going on in the ecosystem. Schedule, not only where to watch, but when and how. And one of the most undervalued things is actually rules. And as esports continues to grow, there's more legal scrutiny over how things are created and how things are run, and rules are an important aspect of that. It also builds transparency and trust, right? You need to enact a rule, you need to kick somebody out of the league, you need to fine them. Rules are transparent, rules keep you honest, and the rules are an important point. And lastly, you need to market your product. And the way that we've seen success is by viewing embeds in client or on community sites. Work with developers, or if you're a developer, think about incorporating Twitch into your client. Make it easy to watch and easy to access whatever it is that you've created. It's really important. Influencer marketing. There's a lot of people at Twitch here that you could talk to at TwitchCon about influencer marketing. But you're going to draw their following, their people, their fans into your product, which is really important. Social media coverage. The user parallels between social media and esports are actually extremely strong. And actually, what we've seen is, what's very common is a two-screen experience where you're watching Twitch and you're engaging on Twitter or Facebook at the same time. So having a presence on both is actually really important. What's valuable, what are the highlights? And if I didn't get to watch, what did I miss? It's really important. And one that's overlooked, used by big organizations, but by not small organizations, is press releases. And I use this example of E-League. They released this press release around hosting the CSGO Major Championship. And from this spawned dozens of traditional media articles, dozens of articles from Yahoo Esports and ESPN talking about this. It's a big deal. Reddit threads, social media. A ton of discussion comes from one press release that's widely circulated. It's really important. And again, often overlooked. And I think ultimately the most important piece and the last step in this building esports methodology is learning and evolving. People are still figuring things out. And that means at Twitch as well. Everywhere, right? Everyone in the industry, esports is young. It is not fully fledged out. It's not like traditional sports by any means. People don't know what to do, and they're learning how to do it. So learn and evolve, and that's brutally important. Be flexible. You also need to be resilient, because people are going to be really mad at you a lot, probably, in esports. It's pretty common. So be like this horse. Again, I don't know why. So anyways, that's a bit of a crash course. And we're at TwitchCon, so I want to talk about how can Twitch help. Right? Twitch is an important piece. The esports community in the West lives on Twitch. And so using Twitch is going to be very, very important for you as you think about this. We talk about broadcast and marketing. Right? One Nation of Gamers is actually a great example. It's a good case study to look into, where they partnered not only with Blizzard, but with other organizations too, to create an awesome Hearthstone tournament. And the marketing came, and the sponsorships came through HTC and Geico. They found themselves at PAX events. They found themselves with a strong online presence, drawing a ton of viewership around their tournament. And Twitch is a great way to blast that out, right? Not only on the broadcast, but also below, in chat, engaging with people around these different brains. You want to utilize influencers. In some ways that we've seen this be successful, one is, so this is Trump. who's a Hearthstone player. He's playing a game called Faria. I think that's it, Faria, which is a very similar game to Hearthstone, right? And Faria as an organization saw the opportunity of drawing Trump over and playing a game very similar to Hearthstone, and using his pull to market this. Right, so think about that in the esports space. We talked about influencer tournaments. We talked about influencer participation. Think about the guys that are playing games similar to yours or very big on Twitch and how they can help. Influencer tournaments, we've seen a lot of success. This is Chief Pat, huge presence on Twitch and on YouTube. Plays a ton of Clash Royale. Ran a tournament himself. Commentated over the top of it. Found a ton of success. Right? And ultimately, this tournament qualified someone to an even bigger tournament above him. So how can you utilize influencers to run tournaments to help your product be more successful? Developer success and integration. So this is something you can talk about with people here at TwitchCon. But the world of integrations on Twitch is just starting to open. I encourage you guys to check out dev.twitch.tv to learn more. But things like video embed APIs, chatbots, logging in with Twitch. There's so many opportunities that help make accessibility to your product even easier. So definitely check that out. And also, consultation with the Twitch esports team. And I'm here, I'll be out in the hall, love to talk with you guys. There's a ton of us around. But it's a ragtag group of guys whose professionalism is only matched by the quality of this presentation. But a lot of people that have been in the esports industry for a long time. Casters, people who have built tournaments in Smash, in console FPS, in Counter-Strike, people work in the sponsorship space. We want to help you. At the end of the day, we just want this to grow and be bigger so that we all benefit. That's really what we're looking to do. And then lastly, advertising is a very clear-cut way that you can point people and traffic to the thing you're creating. This is an example of Breakaway that's pointing to actually the events that are happening at TwitchCon, running competitions and tournaments on the front page of Twitch. Advertising is a huge way that you can point people to what you're doing. So really, at the end of the day, the takeaways for you guys is really, understand what you're trying to achieve. Understand the ecosystem as a whole. Get to know people, build those relationships. They're super important. And they're all going to be able to contribute in some meaningful way to the success of your product. And that's brutally important. And lastly, take some of these best practices. Know what it means to be successful, and how to engage all these different entities, again, to be successful. So with that, thank you very much.